The year is 2008, and 4-year-old Noah has just walked out of a Target department store with his family. He is holding a particular Lego set. The set in question? 8631 Jetpack Pursuit from the Agents line. Now, most people might find this set to be relatively insignificant, but for me, it was one of my first new Lego sets that I had ever gotten, and thus a big step towards the all-encompassing passion I have for Lego today, and still holds quite a special place in my heart because of that. Despite my nostalgia for the set, I don't want to hype this thing up to the moon before you even get to see the set in full. So let's get a closer look at it, shall we? The set has two figures, the first of which is Sawfist, who has a metal arm with a chainsaw on it, so naturally that is very cool. The other figure is Agent Chase, who has some sunglasses, I guess. And yes, I know, both the figures' heads are inaccurate. I simply could not find the original ones in my collection. Here's a contact for my lawyers if it is that much of a concern. Anyway, figures aren't the only things you get in this set. You also get two absolutely revolutionary builds, including a snow machine with a whole bunch of guns on it. Peak. The other build of the set is this admittedly odd-looking hang glider slash helicopter thing, with not only a plethora of guns, but also a little hook on the back. The hook's purpose is to lift this small ruby case off the back of the snow machine. Quite nice. Overall, I believe this to be quite a nice little set to get you started into the Agents theme. However, the nostalgia might be talking here, because this is one of my favorite sets from my childhood. Even so, I can acknowledge this set is not exactly a Picasso, especially in the displayability category. So what I'm going to be doing today is giving each part of this build a little glow up, starting with the hang glider contraption. Now, right from the start, I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to turn the Agent's vehicle into. The original build really doesn't resemble anything you would see in the real world, so I wanted to up the realism factor by making a hang glider for Agent Chase instead of the weird looking helicopter thing he originally had. The build for the hang glider itself is relatively simplistic, using a combination of 1x1 rounded bricks and 1x2 rounded plates to add a nice curve to the whole thing. I was planning on just giving him a hang glider and calling it a day, but then I started looking at some reference materials for motorized hang gliders and realized that I actually did want to add a propeller somewhere into the model. So I added a propeller underneath the glider build, and with a bit of finesse, it actually came out looking pretty good. The finished product looks quite different than the original model, but I had planned for this to be the case. And hey, when you have access to Fishline for display purposes, your builds really don't need the kind of stability they usually would. And I certainly took full advantage of this fact. And as for the updated version of Agent Chase, I went heavy on the pilot look, actually using a helmet from the 2014 Ultra Agents line to complete the look. Of course, this helmet could be swapped out for a relatively basic hairstyle, reminiscent of his original hairpiece. Once I completed the hang glider, the next step was to start on Sawfist's snow machine. I wanted this build to feel quite similar to the original one, keeping the color scheme of black and orange with a number of guns on it and a place to put the stolen ruby. Of course, I had plans to modernize the build, but I really wanted to keep the aesthetic of the villainous snow machine together throughout the update. One of the big differences in my design compared to the original is that I wanted to create my own skis instead of using some dedicated ski part. That decision was definitely based off my desire to create unique and original building techniques, and not the fact that I don't actually have that many ski parts and could not be bothered to order any. Either way, you're going to see me absolutely fumbling around with various parts trying to get something that might start to resemble snow machine skis. Considering the parts I was working with, I think I wasn't doing too badly, but spoiler alert, the ones you are seeing right now are not even close to the skis found in my final design. So somewhere along the way, it definitely changed. And if we wait just a little bit, boom, there's the final design for the skis. And naturally, during that building session, I entirely forgot to record. Yet another bag fumbled. Either way, I think it worked out pretty well, as now I had a design I was quite happy with, and I could live with not having the building process on camera. The final step for this build was to create a nice looking gun turret to put on the side, and in conjunction with that, create a place to put the stolen ruby. And there you have it, the completed reimagining of Sawfist's snow machine. I'm actually pretty happy with how this turned out. Although I will say that for a build trying to up the realism factor, Sawfist does not exactly have a good place to stand while driving the vehicle, so that's something I may want to think about in the future. I'm quite pleased with my updated version of the man himself, switching out his custom arm for just a normal silver one, then adding in a few gray parts to attach the chainsaw properly. His headpiece is actually taken from Cyrus Borg from the Ninjago Rebooted line. A rather splendid use of parts if I do say so myself. Now, when starting on the background build, I really didn't have much reference material to go off of. Obviously, the box art depicted a snow-capped mountain with a really tiny castle in the distance, but that didn't look like a particularly interesting scene for me to build, so I decided to draw from the only other source of reference material that I had, which was a tiny comic found on the front of the box. The comic depicts the scene right before the events of the set, with Sawfist breaking into a vault within the castle and escaping on his snow machine. Now I had something to work with. I knew the build had to include a vault somewhere in it, and I also knew the general color scheme of the castle, which kinda had a Hogwarts feel about it. After laying down quite a large amount of snow to help set the scene, I started working on the castle, first outlining the floor plan, then building up some of the walls, and adding the broken into vault. Once I finished the vault and had at least a slight vision of what I wanted the castle to be, I moved outside again, adding some lovely snow-covered trees to the scene. I actually had these trees pre-built going into this project, which is quite useful because they're not exactly the most enjoyable thing to put together. The design that I'm using for the outside pillars is kinda cool. Basically, the design relies on 1x1 clip pieces, stacking a bunch of these on top of each other in a sort of spiral pattern, then attaching bars into the clips, giving a nice circular shape to the whole thing. I debated with myself for quite a while on the question of if I should add snow details to the walls or not. Part of me thought that it might look a bit odd, but at the end of the day, I decided that a little snow texture would actually help to anchor the castle in the scene. And I think it does. At this point, I told myself it was time to stop stalling and continue work on the outside snow. This wasn't something I was particularly looking forward to, because snow is actually pretty challenging to build in Lego. The issue is you want to give it just enough texture to make it look natural, but not so much as to ignore how snow actually looks in the real world. I've found that throwing as many slopes as possible at the problem usually yields relatively good results, but it's always something of a challenge. Thankfully, at this point I had completed basically all the snow work and could move back to working on the castle walls. It was also time to integrate both the windows and outside pillars that I had been working with. It was pretty exciting now, as I could really see the castle starting to take shape, and all that time meticulously spent detailing the outside walls was really starting to pay off. Still, it wasn't quite done yet, and I had a few things left to do, like finalizing the outside pillars and detailing the top of the roof. Even though it may be unlikely anyone is ever going to see the top of the roof, I still had to add the detail. And oh, look at this, a random smudge has appeared on the camera lens that will significantly decrease the quality of the remaining time-lapse footage. It happens to the best of us. Blurry footage or no, I continued working on the castle by building out the left side wall just a bit more. Nothing too fancy, I just wanted to make it look presentable at this point. Some of the last building I had to do included detailing the battlements by adding some more snow and a bit more texture, and finishing off the roof by placing a large spire on the top. For this, I had decided to go with the large-scale sand green Harry Potter roofs, which cut out a lot of work for me, and meant the build was practically done. Well, there you have it, the completed build. As I said before, this original set holds a special place in my heart, and I have a lot of nostalgia for it. So going back and reimagining the scene with my building skills of today was a lot of fun, and I hope you had a good time as well. What you're seeing right now is a selection of some of the other absolutely iconic sets from my childhood that I've also been thinking about reimagining. If you see any set that stands out to you in this lineup, feel free to drop it in the comment section, and I might just give that one the same treatment as I gave this set. Who knows? Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.